Good morning. I'm your host, Dan Stafford with the Midwestern Geek in Cali. Here with Midwestern Geek in Cali, episode 97, As the World Trembles. This is about volcanism, geological activity, earthquakes, and what I perceive as an impending rise in those types of activities. So I'm going to get on with it here a little bit, and as usual, we're video casting from 42 Tardis Way here in lovely Temecula, California. Summer's winter home, my little paradise in the wee hours of the morning this time around. But I have some interesting stuff to present for your consideration, so let's get on it. So let's start with some infinity screen here, as usual, and then let's go over to this. And for this one, let's take me off the infinity screen so that you get the whole screen presentation here. All right, so this is the post I'm putting together. Of course, you can see this episode later at the website, MidwesternGeekInCali.com will get you there. And as often done, almost all the time, I will have show notes on the site, and we'll get to that. Just a second here. I'm going to fix my mouse pointer. It's kind of hard to see, even for me. So let me jump in the control panel and do a little tweak here. Alright, much better. Alright, now you can see where I'm pointing the mouse. So show notes, there will be referencing the links that I use in the show, and that will be stuff that you can view in depth. I don't dwell on it because it's other folks' content, so I just want to alert you to its presence and what they're generally talking about. And you can go back and take a look later for yourself. So back in 2005, this is mine, so I can show you all of it I want. This is one of my other blogs. It has to do with climate change. I've been doing this blog since probably around 2002, maybe. Long time, anyway. But way back in December of 2005, I proposed what I called at the time the ping-pong ball theory. And I'm going to get into it in a minute here. I'll give you a graphic representation. I came back and talked about it more later in 2010. I've mentioned it multiple times. It has to do with earthquake, and then also I'm not the only one that talked about this. Later in 2009, some scientists brought up pretty much the same theory I'd been talking about for 4 years already. But let's get into a little bit about the structure of the Earth and why I came up with this theory. So here on Wikipedia, we have some information on the structure of the Earth. Basically, what's the interior of the Earth thought to be like? What do we pretty much know about it? And I'm not going to get into all the text here, but let's get to the graphics of the situation here. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at a thin upper crust, maybe about 15 miles deep. Now, the Earth is like something like, yeah, I think 2,000 plus miles through, all the way through, maybe 3,000. I can't remember off the top of my head what the actual number is. But the point being is that the Earth's crust is thin. It's a very thin layer, and then it becomes kind of soft and mushy, and then liquid on the inside, and then there's like a hard core of like metal inside. This might be molten metal, and this might be like metal that's under so much pressure. I believe it's solid, but under intense pressure. But this brown layer here, which is very thin compared to the overall structure of the Earth, is the outer crust that we actually live on, what we think of as solid Earth. Okay, so let's get into what I'm talking about here with the ping-pong theory. I'm going to switch back to the infinity screen for a minute, and then we'll go back to the camera here. Now let's get this on the screen, and let's see. Yeah, you can see that, okay, as the world turns here. Now, notice here we have Greenland and the Arctic Circle. There's generally a lot of ice. Of course, there's a lot of open water on the top of the Earth. On the bottom of the Earth, there's Antarctica, which is not well represented here because it's pretty much covered with ice. Okay, and so is Greenland, which is the green area here. Okay, and then northern Canada, you know, the northern old Soviet Union and Europe, and you know, Netherlands and all the, you know, Upper Netherlands, all that. So all that area is pretty much covered with ice. Well, so what you have, and I wouldn't be surprised if this toy beach ball here has a kind of similar structure to the actual Earth. A very thin skin followed by kind of a liquidy soft inside. And when you squeeze the top and bottom, like what trillions of tons of ice do, the sides of the thing bulge out a little bit, right? And when you let off, it gets more round, okay? Squeeze, let off, it gets more round. Well, what we're doing is we're moving all this ice on the top and the bottom around to the equatorial region and into the oceans. Okay? Trillions and trillions of tons of water are shifting around on the planet. Now, it's accelerating as well. Now, regardless of what you believe about why it's happening, this isn't getting into the cause, okay? And it makes me kind of sad to say that because I think one way, but whatever. Let's not go there for right now. Let's just talk about what's observed to be happening, that all this ice is melting and it's moving into the oceans from the polar regions. So we're shifting trillions and trillions of tons of water around the Earth. Whether whatever the reasons are, it's happening. So we have to deal with what are the effects of that going to be. So let's get back over to some of the websites, a little infinity screen here again, and go back into, oops, wrong screen. Now, so all that moving around of the Earth's crust, to me, it looks like it's probably going to be causing more and more earthquakes. I can't see how you could not deform the Earth's crust, you know, with the magnitude of energies that we're talking about from all that weight shifting around. I can't see how that's not going to deform the Earth's crust to an extent. Now, it doesn't happen as fast as like it does with the little rubber ball here thing. It tends to shrink and rebound over the course of centuries, but still huge amounts of energy going on. And we take a look here, and we'll look at earthquake activity and the numbers from 1990 to 1999. You know, they're in a fairly lower range. and then 2000 to 2012, you know, and even a little bit lower yet. But then you start looking at 2000 to 2018. Oh, this is just the U.S. All right. So worldwide, 1990 to 2019, not a lot of 8 points, fair amount of 7 to 7.9s. You know, in the 100 to just under 200 range for 6s to 6.9s. It looks to me like there's a general trend towards increase as we keep on going over time. More recent years, the numbers seem to overall have been going up on the number of earthquakes, which kind of falls in line with what I'm talking about here. Now, when we get over past earthquakes, there's another type of geological activity that can be a little bit frightening. And believe me, this was just brought to mind recently when I personally felt some of the shaking from the 7.1 earthquake 150 miles north of here. Ridgeland. I'm not that familiar with the smaller towns in California. I don't remember the exact name. I know the town of Trona was really hit. That's where the famous Trona Pinnacles are, which is a pretty neat geological feature. Huell Hauser covered that. But, you know, I mean, earthquakes are a fact of life in California. What's this? Let me reload this page and see here. Okay, and of course they're going to try to play the video all over again, but yeah, whatever. Supervolcanoes. Supervolcanoes are huge. Yellowstone is a famous supervolcano with a caldera that's like 70 miles wide. When you look at the supervolcanoes, North America has 4 just by itself. There's even one here in Southern California, a bit east of here. With I want to say the caldera for that's almost 200 miles wide. They call it mud pots right now, but that's actually a super volcano right there. So there's 4 of them in North America, actually 5 in North America, but 4 in the continental United States, 3 in South America, 1 in Europe, and then Asia has quite a few as well. So any of one of these volcanoes, if it really erupted, it has the potential to mimic what's called nuclear winter. It would throw so much dust up in the air that it could and just end all life. And I don't think so. They've erupted before and life's still here. But it would not be pretty. You're talking thousands of square miles covered like maybe 1 meter deep in ash. That's 3 feet for those who are used to U.S. measurements, roughly. Figure a yardstick's worth of volcanic ash over thousands of square miles. And closer to the volcano would not be nice at all. The general consensus in the science community right now is that volcanic activity, they don't really think it's on the rise, but they don't really know, because the reporting of volcanoes going off tends to be more centered on the human impacts, and some volcanoes that are out in more wild areas aren't well reported. So that being said, we kind of have to just take their word for it right now, whether or not the volcano activity is increasing around the world. But given what I've just been talking about, I have a hard time seeing this not being a thing later on over time. So be on the watch for this as the years go by, as more ice turns into water and moves into the oceans. Keep your eyes open. I hope it doesn't set off super volcanoes. That would not really be fun. But, well, it's always a possibility. And on that note, I've got a couple of brief notes. The site you saw earlier, let me bring that up again. This is actually a copy of a website for online poetry that went defunct. A while back, I was given a backup copy of the website. I finally figured out how to get into it tonight. This is going to be huge for some friends of mine that are also authors on here. I had almost 1,008, close to 1,800 poems on this website, and probably only had copies of 2/3 of those. So about a third of my poetry I'm back in possession of again. I'm trying to figure out, along with the guy who owned the site, how to export this into or import it into WordPress or some more modern format and get it back online live on the web. That's probably going to be happening around next year. But I have a functional copy of the old website and access to all this poetry. So if any of you were that are viewing this were poets on lightverse.com, that's a piece of good news that's been about 5 years coming. So just a little brief there about that. And on that note, I'm probably going to say, well, as the world trembles, we shall see how it goes. Everyone stay safe out there. And, well, on that note, happy Vulcan fingers to you from the Agent of 42, and thank you for listening. As always, you can find us online at www.midwesterngeekincali.com. You can find us on Twitter at MidwestGeek and you can find us in the Facebook discussion group Midwestern Geek in Cali. And look forward to talking with you guys about this more in the discussion group on Facebook or on Twitter, and see what all of you think. Take care, and thanks again for watching. See you next time.